moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again? The sweet emotion raining all over me.
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again. Making that new.
Good evening, friends. Welcome to the Audit the Vote newsroom. I'm your host, Toni Shoup. I know I say this every time I have a guest, but we have a really special show planned tonight. I can't wait to get in the middle of this. Let us know what you think of the new background. Joel is working on some updates with our new logo and branding and whatnot, and I like this one, but I'd love to know what you guys think as well. Please like and share, subscribe, whatever platform you're following us on, whether it's X or Facebook or Instagram or Telegram or Twitch or all the other 19 things that I can't remember right now. Please share this. This is a story that we are going to want to share as broadly as possible. Comment, if you will, as well, so we can answer any questions that you might have. Tonight's podcast show is going to be different, normal. I'm not going to run through current events. I don't have stuff to promote. I just want to share my new friend with you because I think that his story is impactful. It's very powerful. I know when me and the rest of the Audit the Vote team met Robert at CPAC just 2 weeks ago, we were blessed by his story and his energy, his faith, and just everything about him. I could not wait to share him with the audience. And I hope this is the start. If he hasn't done a ton of podcasts yet, I haven't gotten to interact with him as much as I would have liked to before throwing him at you guys. But I just was so touched by his story and what he dealt with, and more importantly, how he's handling it moving forward. And he just so happens that when he got arrested as a January 6th prisoner, he was a teacher at Shaler Area School District. I don't know if it was high school or middle school. I'm sure he'll clarify that for us. But that's like our backyard. I live in the Pittsburgh area, 30 minutes north of the city, and that's pretty much right. And I'm like, how did I never hear of you before? Like, how did I not hear of this story? Barb, good. I'm glad you love the flag in the background. And so I just felt really led and inspired to share Robert with you. And I'm looking forward to learning more about his story tonight, right along with you guys. So Joel, go ahead and bring in our man, the LegoMan. He goes by the LegoMan, which I've never heard before.
How's it going?
Robert Lego. Now help me. Your last name, do you pronounce it Morse or Morse? How do you?
Yeah, so it's like horse with an M.
Like horse with an Morse. Robert Morss. Got it. Got it. So I don't know, Robert, have you done a lot of interviews? I should have. I'm halfway through your book. So I've at least done that.
Cool. Thank you.
I should have done a deep dive into see if you had done have you done a lot of podcast interviews? What's the deal?
Well, first, before we even talk about other podcasts, let me just thank you for having me on this platform right now with you. It's an honor and it's a treasure. So thank you for the opportunity. But yeah, I've done my fair share. You know, I've done some podcasts and some interviews and things like that. CBS Pittsburgh had me on there briefly, so that was cool. But I know that the interview game isn't, you know, all I'm gonna put my eggs into. That's not the only basket that I have. There's a couple irons in the fire that I have, and one of those is getting back to teaching. Absolutely, I do feel as though that's the gift that I was given from God to do. That's where my heart is happiest, is educating the next generation in a safe environment about how to keep this republic. But there's other surprises that I have here that you guys will be very proud of in the near future.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah, because when I first we met Robert at CPAC through Sarah McAbee, who my audience is very familiar with Sarah. Her and I became like super fast friends. And so anyone that she kind of tells me this is a good one, I usually connect with. But I just kind of like was more jaw dropped then we had dinner as you're telling your story and how things came about. I'm just fascinated with what our government, and not in a good way, but what they were able to get away with. And I'm halfway through your book,
have we been fascinated with our government in a good way, like ever? I mean, I can't name a time where we're like, wow, I'm so proud of these guys. You know, that hasn't happened in a while.
If ever. Oh my gosh, if ever. So to get started, just walk us through your life before COVID, which your book walks us. That was painful, Robert, to read, like to go back through that, because we all remember how hard that was. Walk us through life before COVID up to the election in January 6th until the day. I don't actually know all of that until the day you actually got arrested. Let's start there.
Okay, sure. Well, I can say that in 2016, where the book One Question Remains kicks off, I was actually the leader of the Bull Moose Party on the Penn State main campus. And we were the only club willing to endorse Donald Trump for president. And this is the first time he ran. We made do with it, man. We had a lot of fun promoting the president, but I learned a lot then about how crooked things can be behind the scenes. And I never forgot how Bernie Sanders would be axed from the DNC. And in fact, as we mentioned in the book, a lot of Bernie supporters actually were willing to talk and or come over to the Trump side because of our mutual disdain for the government, like you just mentioned earlier. So here I am in college. I'm transcribing Civil War journals. I am, manufacturing 5Ks for pro-veteran outfits, so I'm making my time count. I wasn't the greatest student. I think I was a better student in prison than I was in college.
Really?
Ironically to say. Yeah, well, think of it. So I was transitioning from the Special Operations Unit of 2nd Ranger Battalion, and that's a fast-paced gig where, you're training to go on missions every night or every other night on kill capture missions. And so to go from that speed to now we're really stressed out about this final. I was kind of, I didn't really get it at the time. I would say that I transitioned better than some, but I could have done better. And I know that for a fact. Well, the year of 2020 was very unique, obviously, because the world saw the pandemic. But while everybody was told to be in their homes, I was actually painting a mural with a crew of mine at the Petersburg Legion, Post 150. And we did a 20-foot wide mural that I designed and organized. It's 10 panels long or 10 panels, 20 feet wide. And it catalogs all of the wars that America has fought in the major campaigns, the last of which being the war in Iraq and Afghanistan that I personally painted to depict my Airborne Ranger and this guy, Thomas McPherson, on one of the missions that he went on prior to his death.
2 seconds. Let me stop you because I think I sent Joel in the chat. Is that the Huntington Daily News that has that mural in it? I sent him a couple articles that you had sent me.
It could be. I know that it was in a couple different news organizations. I I know.
If we had it, I just wanted to get it up so people could. Is that it?
Yep. Yep, that's it. That's the unveiling. Those are the 10 different panels. That's it. Yeah, so we had a lot of fun. And so, to kind of pick you up to speed of what I was doing, I was obviously disgusted with what the government was doing on behalf of the people. But the best way to take it out was to create something that would last and teach a story and encourage others to not want to just observe the mural, but also to contribute to it in ways of making
That's
history
you.
on
Is
their
that
own.
you?
So that's what I was up to. That's me. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, so that's what I was up to. But I was also at the same time observing how sinister our government was, not just destroying every single dynamic that makes America great, whether it be through domestic abuse rates skyrocketing or overdose rates skyrocketing or homelessness rates skyrocketing or foreclosure of homes and businesses skyrocketing through the pandemic. They were also preparing to steal the election. And so I watched the election get stolen live on television at 3 o'clock in the morning. I watched those numbers flip. I know what I saw. You can't tell me what I didn't see. And that's kind of how I feel about January 6th. Obviously, I was there for that as well. But I would say that I got really active into politics because of the 2020 pandemic. I
I
remember
love how you
on the
call it a
4th.
pandemic.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Weird.
oh yeah. It's nothing else other than a pandemic. With the amount of people that had a role to play and the machinations of the 6 feet apart and the vaccine mandates and all this stuff that essentially played into the hands of, these incredibly sinister individuals like Dr. Fauci, but not into the hardworking man or woman that is trying to support his local community with a small business. I was enraged by that. And so it wasn't just the pandemic too, it was also the hypocrisy of the BLM riots that were happening at the time. And a part of me kind of has my heart broken to a degree because Black lives definitely do matter. They definitely shouldn't be executed by anybody, let alone the police. But I don't think that burning down a home or a business ran by Black Americans is the way to answer that problem either. So NPR had to admit that Black America suffered the most because their small businesses were burned down the most during the Black Lives Matter riots. So the very people that they claimed to help were the ones that suffered the most. And that's all cataloged in One Question Remains True. And so all of these things that I'm observing because of social media and because of the hypocrisy of the mainstream media kind of catapulted me to not only want to be at the Stop the Steal rally at Harrisburg immediately after they stole the election, but in addition to that, I also went to January 6th. Obviously, Donald Trump made that tweet, but with everything I just recited, that was also the majority of the contributing factors for me to want to be there. In addition to the fact that our government sends millions and billions of dollars to all these other nations in COVID relief packages, and yet our kids are starving, our homeless vets are dying, our streets are broken, our schools are a mess. Why aren't those things being fixed? But everybody else that is outside of our borders, which what are our borders anymore until Trump came along, are benefiting from. So the level of disgust was reaching a fever pitch by the time January 6th happened. And I think that was by design too.
I totally, and you unwrap all this in his book. So he didn't come on here. I didn't bring him on here to sell his book, but it is a really good resource that catalogs exactly what he said. It'll take you all the way through. You do talk about the 2016. I was dead asleep to this, Robert. I was asleep at the wheel until 2020. And he mentions Penn State. So those who don't know, he's a Penn Stater. I am as well. I'm not as proud as
We are.
I know. I'm not as proud of my alma mater as I used to be when they started allowing professors to push sick pornographic assignments on their students, and when the parents complained, the university backed the parents, which is just disgusting. So it is what it is. At least we do share that, but I think it is so essential for us to remember and to catalog. I love how you have cataloged everything. And so since I was dead asleep and I woke up the day the governor shut the schools down in Pennsylvania and started going, what the heck's going on here? Started paying attention to what was going on around me. I didn't know all the backstory about 2016 and Bernie Sanders and the fact that he probably was the legit nominee and they took it from him. Also really odd, Tulsi Gabbard endorsed him back then, I believe, and he voted not to confirm her. So talk about a swamp and just a disgusting cesspool of a mess that we have to now dig our hands in and unravel. But you were involved even before 2020. So I have so much respect for, he is what we need the younger generation to do, is to get involved and to study. And I love seeing that progression, as much as you had to suffer afterwards. And I think we all don't want to compare anything that I've been through or anything to what you have, but it sucks that we had to go through that. But hearing you talk about now what we're seeing President Trump do is in exposing all the stuff that you just mentioned. I mean, by and large, the majority of the public had no clue what they were doing with our money, and now it's on full display. Which, unfortunately, this is the hardest pill to swallow, is me realizing they had to steal the election for us to get to where we're at today. And as hard as that was, and as miserable, it got us here.
Yeah, I would say that in response to what you just said, I wish I was wrong. I wish to God I was wrong. But the fact that I had to do time, not because I trespassed or not because I might have, picketed, but because I believed in the Constitution as it stands. And I think that it should have applied to us equally under the law here in America, not just to those that do their bidding in the streets and under the cover of darkness like Antifa or Black Lives Matter riders did. But the fact that we were crushed the way that we were confirms that we were right. And I think that the hell that we saw awaiting us on January 6th, that we tried to warn the American public about, like, if this certification goes through, we're going to have a really rough 4 years. And what do you know? The worst president of all time, Joe Biden, tanks our country in every demographic and in every metric possible. And it's crazy that, and we go into this in the book as well, it's crazy that Trump has showed up as president literally as our nation was about to fall off the precipice of point of no return. And so we're not going to have a Trump to save us again the next time we're here. And so that's why books like One Question Remains is imperative for you to read. It's not just something to entertain you or educate you. It's actually something to prepare you so that when the torch is passed to you, you're ready to receive it.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. When the torch is passed to you, you're ready to receive it. Okay. We could unpack so much. Everything you say, I got to take notes so I don't forget to ask questions. But Robert, walk us through. I told everybody were you teaching high school, or was it
I think it was high school at Shaler, yeah. It was at
high school at Shaler. So a lot of my audience, hey Mark lives in Carnegie. A lot of my audience is in Pittsburgh, Robert, and like they'll be like, wait, what? How the heck did we not know this
How's
story?
It going, guys?
It's like, hey, so he was a high school
Good to
teacher.
See you again.
High school teacher at Shaler. Oh my gosh. How did you end up, or I shouldn't say how do you, walk me through your experience on that day on January 6th? Because I was there too. A lot of people now that we have, the pardons and Trump back in the White House, some folks that were there were afraid to say it, myself included. I tiptoed around it, but now it feels like more and more people are getting comfortable. Walk me through your experience on that day. If it's in the book, I apologize. I just didn't get to it yet, and I will.
No,
but
it's okay.
Let's go there.
It is in a book, but not nearly as much as I can divulge today, which I think is crucial because our side of the story hasn't yet been told. So the mainstream media has had a monopoly on one side of the story of January 6th, which not only is completely inaccurate, it's also a full-blown lie. And so now that we have the upper hand, and now that enough people are speaking out, and now that enough people are finding courage to share this information and to discuss it in public domains, now we can start to really connect the dots as to how that day was indeed nothing but a lobster trap. And so that's exactly what I saw. I thought that things were strange after Trump's speech was over with. There was a lot of people taking my photograph. Now, I was near the Washington Monument. And I know I'm not the worst looking guy in the world, and I'm not the best looking guy in the world, but I thought it was kind of strange how many people were taking my photo. And I know it might have had something to do with the uniform that I decided to wear that day. The prosecution, who literally writes the script for the mainstream media, coin it because that's exactly what it is in this country. The prosecution said that I dressed up for war that day. That is an absolute lie. I dressed up in my uniform to display that I've already invested sweat and blood equity into the future of this nation. And so if the election truly was stolen, which I know that it was, I have something to say about it because I earned my rights. I didn't just inherit them in the bloodstream. And so that was a huge problem to me. And that was a big red flag where I'm like, why are people taking my photo? This is kind of strange. And as people were magnetized towards the Capitol, because we were told by numerous individuals, not just Trump, but several other speakers at the Ellipse, that there was going to be a second set of speeches at the Capitol. So that was the hook. That was the reason why the crowd needed to migrate from the Ellipse to the Capitol. But as I gradually got closer to the Capitol, regardless of how my feet hurt and how cold I was and how tired I was and how hungry I was and how I had a job interview the very next day, I'm starting to hear fireworks. Or at least that's what I thought it was. And I thought to myself, man, it's kind of early for fireworks. It's still light outside. It's an overcast sky. And I'm hearing these firework noises. And then I get closer to the Capitol, bells are starting to ring in my ear, and I recognize those are not fireworks. I know those noises. And so I will admit that my choice of attire might have contributed to my reaction. But after watching what happens next, my Ranger train took over, and essentially the largest crowd of the...
I was going to say, what was he wearing? We got to find pictures of what he was wearing. These are the things that I didn't
from China and tried to find refuge. Yeah, I would say the middle picture there with the plate carrier is definitely one of the many photos that swept the internet. But
that was you on the 6th then? Oh no, wait, where'd he go?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. So I saw the pro-Trump support from the biggest group of Asians that had fled from China that I'd ever seen in my entire life, who were passing out NCCP flyers earlier, get shot at with the flashbang grenades from the police officers. And after I saw that, that's when my mind made up, or maybe the absence thereof. But I got sucked in at that point.
Police officers throwing the flashbangs at what looked like Chinese Americans. Is that what I just heard you say? You saw it.
100%. 100%.
What, other than trying to provoke the crowd?
Your audience needs to go on to Rumble or Real America's Voice or whatever, log into Cowboy Logic's latest episode where my buddies Dan Caldwell and Jeff McKellop recite the video footage that they have been begging to recite to Congress that was in our discovery, where you watch from body camera footage police officers not de-escalating things on January 6th, but pointing out people in the crowd that look vulnerable so they can shoot them and laugh about it after the fact. They drop names, they drop dates, everything. This was part of the design. They wanted to incite the men to want to be a man and protect those that they're supposed to protect, like the young, like the sick, like the old, like everybody else that might not be able to defend themselves. So a grandma that is standing there with her arms wide open gets shield bashed in the face 3 times by a police officer, and now you're surprised why men want to go defend her. And the irony of it all was that throughout the entire summer of the previous year in 2020, we were pro-police. We were the whole thin blue line guys. And now, as we have, back to blue flags, we're getting shot at by the police. The very people that we put our credibility on the line to speak up for the year prior. It was a very chaotic and confusing and frankly heartbreaking time. I watched people get their cheeks blown out. I watched people get pushed off of ledges. I watched people get blown up and kids scream. And so this was a sick and twisted environment, and it gets worse. So not only is there the biggest bar fight in broad daylight now taking place right before my eyes, but now you have people playing the bagpipes behind me, and you have little drummer boys beating away like it's some Revolutionary War battle. And you have people on megaphones saying, "This is it, patriots. It's now or never. If you don't do something today, you're going to lose your country forever." And then this is where it gets even crazier. This is how you know it was a professional operation. They had individuals within the crowd that were whispering to individuals, much like the whole Ray Epps maneuver, that, hey, every capital is getting taken over in the country. Hey, the CNN building is being stormed. We're doing this, guys. We're taking over the place. And so these were provocateurs that were planted in the crowd. In the book, One Question Remains, we reference another book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman that point blank show you how the CIA has done maneuvers like this in many South American countries to influence and dominate the political life of countries to make them beholden to American ideals, perhaps the American government, not the American people, I should say. But essentially, this is what was taking place. And so you had FBI agents in the crowd. Congress has already discussed that we have at least evidence to confirm that there's over 200 FBI agents in the crowd. The FBI at one point in time admitted during a joint session of Congress that they lost track of how many federal informants that they had in the crowd, albeit confirming that they had people in the crowd, but it gets even crazier. I did time with a guy named Josiah who, in his initial statement to the FBI, admits to be a communist. And he says his sole purpose for showing up that day was to get Trump supporters shot and killed. He was also passing around PCP-laced cigarettes, all while wearing a MAGA hat on. And he's the only one to date whose prosecution, not the defense, but the prosecution asks the judge for less time. Explain that to me. How does that make sense?
Okay, let me please share this. If you're watching this right now, please share it. This is the stuff that I don't, for the life of me, what I can't understand, as excited as I am with the popcorn and everything Trump's doing, I don't know why people like you, Robert, aren't on Tucker or Rogan or any of the really big platforms telling these stories, because in my view, this is how we stop it from ever happening again. People, there's so many people on quote unquote our side of the aisle that don't know this. I was there and you're telling me things that my jaw is hitting the ground. Like, what? So please share this video, whatever platform you're watching on, share it tomorrow. We have new software now that's pulling clips that hopefully will get this to go a little more viral so that his story can get out there. And hopefully, if he hasn't been on a big name podcast yet, this is just the catalyst that'll get him there. That's what I was alluding to earlier, Robert. When I first met Sarah, I thought, like, you know, the connections that I had made, I was going to help this girl. And little did I know she had already been in front of Congress and on Dinesh D'Souza stuff. And I was just like, okay, never mind. We have the same connections. We're good. But we can at least.
Great. She's awesome.
Well, yeah, we formed an alliance, you know, and like, and our friendship really, it just grew. And my audience is, I'm sure their heart is their heart wrenched to hear this, because most of them are probably Pennsylvania. We were in the thick of this. The reason we exist as an Audit the Vote organization is because of January 6th and the stolen election. So I feel like the January 6ers, we have this kindred spirit. The reason you guys were in jail is because they stole a freaking election. And thank God that he put enough fire in the hearts of people in Pennsylvania that we were able to keep that narrative alive, chase down the truth. And even though we didn't get there, we got to a point in 2024 where we're able to stop enough of the shenanigans that could get President Trump over the finish line. So it's humbling to think what we've gone through, and it's gross, but this heartstring that we now share, that we pulled together for 4 years, watched our country go down the drain, and then somehow we've been given a reprieve. I feel like it was a pure miracle that President Trump got back. Pure miracle. I've had a friend of mine on here. We shared his pardon certificate, actually. So if you have that and want to share it with me, I'm happy to share it with my audience. I just love seeing that with the names, and because these are prisoners of war. I mean, he is a prisoner of war that an Army Ranger. I didn't know how you were dressed. I know I asked you how you entered. I don't know if you want to talk about this or not. It's up to you. I asked you how you entered the Capitol that day when we were at dinner, and I could tell your response was like, I don't know if I should say that. So,
well, I mean, there's plenty of photos. There's plenty of photos. I don't mind saying that I went through the window, and that's a common misconception that a lot of people think that we're just playing the victim card because of what happened to us and all this and that, and we don't have any regrets. I definitely regret the fact that our nation went through what we went through, and I regret that my family had to suffer. And I said in my sentencing speech, and I'll say it again today, that Donald Trump did not force me or coerce me to do what I did that day. I did it on my own accord. I'll own what I did. But what I didn't do is murder somebody. What I didn't do is beat somebody to death. What I didn't do is shoot a flashbang at somebody's face, because the fate that I suffered is equivalent to what men and women in the uniform did that day. And so the stripes I took were meant for someone like Michael Byrd or Leland Morris or any of these other officers that actually instigated the crowd so much that people died at their hand. So I don't have the regret for standing up for what I believe. My regret is that people didn't come home from January 6th that should have. I got a couple points for you that I want to make very abundantly clear. you're talking about a camaraderie, and I think that I mentioned this to you at dinner as well. The tide that's rising, and this camaraderie between strangers because of common ideals, I believe is akin to what Americans had to have felt in the midst of World War II, when everybody needed to work together so that we could win a war. The war that we're fighting today is not as kinetic, though it can become that way, as you have seen as a result of January 6th. But the war that we're in now is a spiritual one. It's a war that's waged in information and culture and education, but don't get it twisted. There's a conflict taking place every single day. But the fact that that's happening is what binds people together from all walks of life. I mean, the fact that I never met you before and I didn't know you from Adam, but we clicked like that the second that we met, that's indicative of the fact that there's something bigger at work here. Something is taking place to bind strangers together to save this nation. And that is the goal. And that's the whole point of doing what we can and fighting the fight that we are, so that the next generation can keep this republic. What I can also tell you is this: out of the 3 states that produced the largest amount of January 6ers, they were Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania ought to be proud, because we've been the state that's been in the center of a large majority of American politics and events since the beginning. And so that's something that I think that Pennsylvania can be very proud of, is that we've got a lot of patriots here. We've got more than we realize, and we actually outnumber the opposition. If only our courage did, then we would be okay. We would survive as a nation. And the last thing that I wanted to say very briefly, and this is something that I might be able to spoil for some of your viewers if they hadn't read this far in the book yet, there's a portion where we ask questions that we don't have the answers to yet. And we hope that we will soon. But one of the questions we ask is why in 2016, on October 22nd, in a magazine called The Week, why is the caption for that week's issue saying, "What will Trump supporters do if they think the election is stolen?" And the art on the cover of this magazine is exactly like what the mainstream media tried telling the people of America that January 6th looked like. It was published in 2016, prior to the election. But the caption is, "What will Trump supporters do if they think the election is stolen?" You can go and track this cover down. It's referenced in a book. But the reason why I bring this up is, how long have the breadcrumb trails been laid in order for this narrative to be accepted without question by our fellow Americans? I think it was designed all the way back in 2016. And I think that there was always a plan to ensnare the American people and a candidate of their choice into something like January 6th, so that we would never rise above the lies that they tried to burden us with. But I think that they tried to pick a fight with God, as government always does. Government would like to be God. And that's why, as you've noticed throughout history, a lot of these communist nations that have murdered millions of their people in order to establish this type of tyranny have outlawed religion, have gotten rid of God, have gotten rid of Christmas, and killed the priests or locked them up with the prostitutes to shame them. And so the war that is at stake now isn't just for a nation, it's for the souls of America. And that's why we have to advocate toward the Creator, so that we can actually save this sinking ship of a nation.
Amen. My audience, I'm getting teary-eyed listening to some of the stuff that you're sharing. I'm sure my audience is doing the same thing. Robert, walk us through, because I don't know much about your arrest, or I know you got connected to Sarah through her husband Colton. Walk us through, like, when did you get arrested? How did that all unfold?
So luckily it wasn't in front of the school. The students had already endured a lot that year. Within the 6 months that I was at Shaler, 2 of the teachers died from the coronavirus vaccine. So those unexpected deaths of healthy people, but the one thing that no one wants to talk about, but that's exactly what took place, is that they just recently took the vaccine because the Department of Education was pushing everybody to get vaxxed. I did not. So that was rough. So the kids had already been through enough, plus the pandemic was waging a war against their own minds. So they were under a lot of stress. So luckily, if I could even say that, I was arrested outside of my apartment on June 11th, 2021. And it was really crazy because I found myself on the dumb end of a rifle and recognized, wow, this must be what it feels like to be on the opposite side of a raid, quite similar to the ones that I did while I was a ranger. So from the very beginning, the insult to injury began to layer itself. At that point in time, I was taken to the Allegheny County Jail, and I was there for about 3-ish weeks. And then I was moved to the DC jail, where I could have swore I was in the twilight zone, because in my cell of solitary confinement in our nation's capital, no less, in behind bars, I could look up out of my window and in the corner see the television showing live video footage of the Afghan pullout and the smoke and the C-17 and everybody chasing it on the runway. And so everything that I fought for in that desert was literally going up in flames before my eyes while sitting in an American jail cell in our nation's capital, no less, being called a domestic terrorist by the commander in chief, imposter that he was. So, I mean, it's been such a weird trip, because half of it doesn't even sound like it should make sense. But I trust the author and the finisher of my faith. He's a really good storyteller. And I think the more that I entrust in him, the more that my story is going to unfold in the positive instead of the negative. But it was a rough time that I'll be talking about for the rest of my life, because it's going to make me a better man, not because it's going to break me or this country, because it's actually fuel to my fire to make sure that this never happens again, and that I'm one of the last political prisoners in America.
Oh my gosh, it's just gut wrenching. Lola Days, yeah, Joel, stick the link for his website, put it in the chat. So if people want to support, you're not only supporting him by reading the book, you are also supporting Stand in the Gap Foundation that he's working with Sarah and Shane on, where they want to help rehabilitate political prisoners from January 6th. Because something that you said to me, Robert, when we were, I think it was when we were leaving dinner, that really struck me, is that not a lot of men, they instigated people that weren't able to handle what was about to unfold. And you experienced a lot of that and met a lot of those folks while you were in prison. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that was also heart-wrenching.
Yeah, well, I think that oddly enough, my time as a ranger kind of prepared me for my time in prison and behind bars. And so essentially, the only reason why people get PTSD is because their naive ignorance gets shot out the window, and something that they're looking at scares them and they're unprepared to encounter. That's the only reason why anybody has PTSD, because we don't get PTSD from driving in a car, because we all do it 1,000 times. But you get something like PTSD from seeing something you didn't expect to see or feel or smell. So I think a lot of men were snapped because they were doing their best to live a good life. Me and all the other veterans got scooped up. We already sacrificed for the country. We already believed in this nation, and we were willing to sign the dotted line, and we were willing to uphold the oath that we swore to the Constitution. And if you think about it, we're supposed to protect the Constitution between enemies, foreign and domestic, and we're supposed to follow the orders of the president. And that's exactly what happened on January 6th, not the opposite. So for us to do everything within our power to try to be good men and then to be slapped in the face, it reminds you of the story of Job, who he's completely broken, he's completely destitute, and even his own friends are saying, you must have done something wrong to have received this type of punishment. And something that I mentioned to you at that dinner, and I want to say it over and over and over again, because it's something that men especially need to hear, but Americans at large need to recite and focus on, is one of the most beautiful lines in the Bible. And it's Job 13:15, which says, though you slay me, still I trust you. And so if men that are broken can have that mentality, that though they're being slayed either behind bars or by the haunting nightmare of what it was like to be incarcerated, trust God. He's worthy of our trust. And so that's what ended up being my source of strength and confidence. And here we are today as freedmen. We didn't have to be. And you said it in the beginning, that's a miracle. And so if we're going to believe in God's miracles, we can also believe that he can turn our individual lives around. And so one of the best things that I can advocate for these men that are suffering, whether they're January 6th or not, is to find a mission, find a cause to fight. You find a reason to take up your spiritual gift. So one of the things that Jesus tells his disciples, that if you want to follow him, or if you want to be a disciple, you got to do three things. You got to deny yourself, which it's a funny concept, but denying yourself doesn't just mean denying yourself that ho-ho or that beer or, that guilty pleasure. It also means deny your fears, deny your insecurities, deny your creature comforts, and deny your safety. And so once you start denying yourself and realizing your limitless potential, now you don't need anybody's help for protection or advice. You actually found your own strength. And then Jesus says to pick up your cross, which means to find that spiritual gift that you have, dust it off because you're probably not using it, and you know it already, and to shoulder it, and to be proud of it. And if God has given you that calling, quit ignoring it, because that's the reason why your life sucks. You've been ignoring a calling for too long that you know that you need to take advantage of. And so when you shoulder that burden, it actually does one of two things. It actually teaches you what you're actually capable of, but it also teaches you that responsibility is a part of the deal of existence. And we're not here to just merely be lumps on a log. We're here to fix things and fight things and to rage against the dying of the light. So you got to pick up your cross. You don't ask for lighter burdens, you ask for broader shoulders. And then the next thing that Jesus says is to follow him. Well, a lot of people, as we're going to celebrate here soon, Easter, we celebrate that Jesus went to heaven, but he didn't go to heaven first. He went to hell first. And so the whole idea, the whole concept is that if you really want to live this life as a Christian, you have to be prepared to face and storm the gates of hell. You shouldn't be surprised when things like that happen, as it talks about in the New Testament, where you shouldn't be surprised as if some strange thing were happening to you. It's actually happening to all the believers around the world. And so when you start taking faith seriously, it's not the prosperity gospel, it's the real way, truth, and life. It's difficult, and you're going to find that the world's going to hate you for it. But we're also instructed to take heart, because the world hated Jesus Christ first, and he has overcome the world. So we've got nothing to be afraid of, and that's why they can't stand us. That's why they hate us, and that's why they wanted to crush us on January 6th, and that's why we're going to win in the end, is because our God is bigger than any kind of Tower of Babel that the government can build.
Wow. Robert, I only hope you're definitely too old for my oldest daughter. She's 14, but you embody everything
Definitely
that I
too
hope.
old. Let's just put that out there right now. As a teacher, definitely too old.
But I pray for my daughter
right now.
I pray for my daughters and for the man that I know that the Lord has for them if they are to marry, which I believe is his plan. Because I know my husband and I God chose us. We did not choose one another, but he chose us. And thank God he knew what he was doing, because we're perfect complements. He's everything I'm not. And I pray for my daughters. I have 3 of them, 14, 10, and 7, that God will bring them the right man at the right time and reveal that to them. And I look at you and I think, my gosh, if I get one son-in-law like this, I will be so happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that compliment. And I can say that there are men out there, they just have to find their courage. And maybe after they hear this or hear something else, they realize that, this country is worth fighting for. This way of life is worth fighting for. I was in a Catholic mass over the weekend, and they did this little thing where they take all the young kids and they bring them up front, and they have a little story hour. And, I thought to myself, man, that's worth fighting for right there. These kids that feel safe amongst us, that are talking to God like they're talking to a friend in the land of the free and home of the brave, that's worth fighting for. There's no other fight worth fighting. Sports are going to come and go. The little petty disagreements that we have with our coworkers mean nothing compared to the safety and the future of that child who's looking to us for direction and guidance and trust. And so, that's why I wanted to become a teacher in the first place. But there's more men out there like me. They just need to know that if they don't show up, this government will eradicate that spirit within us, and we won't have this place to call home for much longer.
Have you read the book Wild at Heart, Robert? You sound like you have, because you understand.
John Eldridge, of course I have.
Yes, that men are designed to battle to fight and adventure to live and a beauty to rescue. And that's what you just went through.
Yes.
That's what men the Lord designed them that way. And when you find that
well,
out,
I would also say too, in addition to that, the other book that he wrote, Beautiful Outlaw, is something that I would also advocate for every young man to read, because Beautiful Outlaw describes the personality of Jesus, where you learn that Jesus was not the calm and sandal-laden hippie that, strung a ukulele with losers. Jesus was somebody that was willing to tie cords together and whip people. Jesus was the person who was willing to give the slip to the Pharisees or outsmart them. Jesus was the guy that was willing to tell a joke. Jesus was the guy at the Last Supper to tell his disciples to sell their cloaks and buy swords. So the personality of Jesus is what's missing, because a lot of Christians that vote Democrat or think that they can't get down with MAGA because Trump is a jerk have totally forgotten that Jesus was willing to curse the fig tree and call the Pharisees a den of vipers, and also advocate for his disciples to be gentle as doves, but as cunning as serpents. And so the personality of Jesus is a warrior. The personality of Jesus is someone who's brave and who's willing to fight the good fight. And he's willing to be compassionate enough to give you time to make up your own mind so that you can decide whether or not you want to take advantage of his sacrifice or not, that he didn't have to make. But he's also willing to fight tooth and nail to redeem us all. And that's a man. And so the idea that Jesus is just some moral teacher is stupid, and it's wrong. I think it's a lie from the pit of hell. I think that Jesus is the most remarkable man I've ever encountered in my entire life, and I'd like to be like him. And he inspires me, and I'm in love with who Jesus is. And it's okay to say that, and it's necessary for the safety and survival of this republic.
Robert, if I could drop mics, I'd be throwing mics on the ground right now. Everything you're saying is so good, because it's truly what my husband and I are in the generation, we're Gen Xers, and we were thrown into the college atmosphere of just being completely indoctrinated. And when we met, though he had conservative values, he's from West Virginia. We both grew up in good moral conservative homes, but we had strayed in terms of definitely in our faith. And he was an agnostic when I met him. We got saved together. That's a whole nother story. But what drew him to the Lord is he met men like what you just described, because he was taught growing up that it was the peaceful hippie, that he's really not. And he was drawn to what the Jesus that you just described. And it has made all the difference in our life. So thank you for sharing that. And people are asking in the chat about these books. So Joel has them up there. John Eldridge, I've read Wild at Heart. It's been years, but it was a game changer. It helped me understand my husband and helped me understand men. It's one of the reasons I think we have a good marriage today. I've never read this one before, but I'll have to look into it. I want, as we wind things down, I try to keep this under an hour, although with stuff like this, if we could talk all night, or as long as people will listen, I'm fine with that too. When we shut things down,
a good time.
When we shut things down, don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you backstage about maybe meeting in person this weekend. If you're going to be in the Pittsburgh area, maybe we can meet up in person. But at any rate, all right. So June 11th.
Yes.
And did you ever get bond or bail, or forgive me if I'm saying that wrong? Like, were you basically from June 11th? You were in prison the whole time.
The whole time. Yeah. So over and over and over again, the judge decided that I was too dangerous to be let out into society. He also said that because of my training as a ranger, that I weaponized it against the government, and I cannot be trusted in the company of, fellow Americans. But it's interesting because it was only until after my arrest on the last day of school, which I discovered was a deliberate design of theirs, a year and a half into my arrest, I finally get my discovery, which is illegal, but, in order for me to fight my case. So I finally get my evidence to fight my case a year and a half into my incarceration. And I discovered that the FBI bragged within their discourse about how they can make me hurt more by arresting me on the last day of school. And so in so doing, they admit that I can be trusted amongst students and in the community, and I can be trusted to fly to places like Reno, Nevada and Utah to visit my grandparents and then back to Pittsburgh. I can be trusted to do those things while they see me and observe me, and they sneak up on me and things of this nature and follow me like a hunted dog. But it's only after my arrest am I too dangerous, regardless of the fact that I have no criminal history whatsoever, regardless of the fact that I've served this country honorably, regardless of the fact that I have never had a single fight while I was incarcerated, not a single disciplinary action while I was incarcerated, and not a single trip to the hole. I know you've heard a lot about the hole. I never went because I was able to keep calm, and I was trying to honor God the entire time, and I wasn't a danger to anybody except the people that are trying to ruin this country. And that's why I never got to see the light of day. However, here's the deal. If I would have been let go, if I would have been given bond, I might not have transformed as much as I have while I was incarcerated. I might not have been able to dig as deep as I have while I was incarcerated and learn and study the Bible and grow and read and mature and blossom while under fire. I considered what I went through as that incarceration as my second basic training. When I went through basic training the first time, I was becoming an Airborne Ranger. This time around, I was becoming something else. And we have yet to discover who and what that's going to be. But in my mind, I thought to myself, this is my second basic training, but I'm also not going to shame the people that believe in me, because a lot of people have walked away from me. I would say a vast majority of the people that I actually moved from Reno, Nevada to Pennsylvania to come spend time with and share my life with no longer speak to me. And so that's been very painful. But the people that stayed and the people that believed in me and the people that knew who I was, either from the day that I was born or from 2 seconds after hanging out with me at Penn State, those are the ones that stuck around that I was not going to shame or embarrass for their choice to make the tough call and be by my side as much as they could. Furthermore, I also knew that I wasn't going to shame my God, and I also wasn't going to shame Trump, especially now after having supported us, advocated for us, and then pardoned us. It's my responsibility to make sure that these people don't feel that they were taken advantage of or fooled. And I recognize also that the best way that I can retaliate against those that locked me up and try to ruin my life and try to, ruin my life and my fortune and my sacred honor was to punch back with the right hook of integrity and shame my enemies with how dishonest they were, and to shame them with how inaccurate their judgments were. And so quite literally, they say that revenge is essentially living well. But in my case, the Count of Monte Cristo revenge is living a life that not only shames my enemies, but makes my God proud, because the media was wrong. The friends and family that have abandoned me were wrong. And my God was always right. And the people that still love me are right. But it's also up to me to decide that. And I will not let you down.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm going to channel my inner Tim Pool and say, smash the like button. My husband was watching a lot of Tim Pool. Please share the show with everyone you know. He says that every night, and it's like getting touching. So please share this. It is a good one. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Please share this to get this story out. Robert, I have so much I still want to talk to you about. Let me try to channel this in. Talk to us about the Legos. How?
Oh, yeah. So
how are you the Lego
long
man?
story short, this is what happened. So when I got arrested, I didn't know any of this was taking place. But as the FBI, go through my apartment and they ransack it and everything, they're passing by very dangerous objects like the United States Constitution or the Holy Bible. And they get to an area where there's a nuclear stockpile of Legos, which, no shame, I love Legos. I think it awakens the engineer in all of us. But I actually played a lot of Legos in 2020 when everything was shut down. It was really cool. I would just sit around. Legos on the website, actually, you can buy. You can customize them and everything. But they come across these Legos and they act as if they find the holy grail to January 6th, which was none other than a Lego model kit of the United States Capitol. That they claim I planned January 6th with. So they try to pin the entire day of January 6th on me. I'm called the architect of the insurrection. This is literally in my court documents, where this is some kind of how like a supporting argument that I'm the culprit of January 6th. Like me and Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump sat around and built this Lego set to plan January 6th. This is literally the type of garbage that they were pushing to sell how much of a lie that this day was. And so the judge, however, when all this is admitted in court, the judge says, how is this possible if the Legos are still in the box? So the whole thing blows up. I mean, you can find all kinds of satire on the internet now about it. Babylon Bee wrote an article about how right next to the Capitol, I have a Lego model kit of Hogwarts, and me and Voldemort are going to now storm Hogwarts Castle when this is all said and done. You know, it just became so funny. And so it was a shred of black humor, which is great, but I'm not letting it go though, because it goes to show you how far this country suffered under the hand of a very dishonest media. It also shows you how far this government was willing to go to sell a lie. And it also shows how pathetic they will behave in order to cover down on their own dishonesty and sins against the Constitution and the American people. So it's a funny little, but it's also a reminder of how gross this government has become and how much it needs to be cleaned up. And so I'm the Lego Man now. It's kind of funny and it's hilarious, but it's also kind of tragic because it never should have happened that way. But because it has, I'm going to make a lot of lemonade out of it.
So, okay, I'm reading this. Pittsburgh, PA. Look at this, people. The FBI released disturbing new details today regarding alleged January 6th rioter, Robert Morss, who had a fully constructed Lego Capitol building in his home. And you're saying that's 100% false because your Legos were in the box, yes?
They were in the box.
Agents say Morse.
And that's the Babylon Bee article he was mentioning about.
Okay. So this isn't all right. Correction. Let me make it
on his site. All these links that he's mentioning are on his site. And
okay,
that's the Babylon Bee one.
Thank you for the correction. But the point is, they pinned it on you saying you had this built and it was still in the box. Was there something else that came out in the court documents that they tried to use and pin on you and say, this is how we can prove that he planned it? You alluded to something at dinner. I can't remember.
Yeah. So what they also did is they entered my Jeep, which they didn't have a warrant for. So that's a Fourth Amendment violation right there. I mean, let's count how many constitutional amendments within the Bill of Rights were violated, you know. But anyways, they go through my Jeep. They find a notebook that I've had for over 12 years at that point in time. And one of the pages said the words, how to build a hometown militia. Now check this out. They don't do their research or their homework. Within the Ranger Blue Book, it's literally mentioned that should our nation be invaded, the Ranger battalions disband. Every Ranger goes home to his home community and builds a militia, gives out the training that he's supposed to have in his mind so that the public knows how to fight against an incoming force. That's literally a part of our Ranger background and doctrine. And so as I've had this little journal throughout my entire military career, and I've jotted down a bunch of different things like how to lay in an ambush or how to place a claymore or how to do, you know, battle drills and things of this nature, they take this one thing out, this one page out, and then they try to couple it with a couple names of trusted friends that I had in the area where I grew up, and they try to paint me as an ad hoc, unofficial oath keeper. That's what they did. So now they're really scared because I'm a Ranger. I'm a teacher that is willing to teach real history instead of CRT garbage. And now they're trying to paint me as some kind of militia kingpin. And then on top of that, I'm also a Lego mastermind because somehow without building the Legos, I can plan all of January 6th with my mind.
That's I gotta say, if I hadn't met you in person, I might think this whole thing is a Babylon Bee article, that it's all made up because this is just so preposterous.
Right? What has my life come to?
The stuff, and it makes you sick to your stomach that this is what our government had become. But when you understand history, as you pointed out, I love, I'm sure way more about history than I do, especially American history, is that this is what governments do. This isn't, we were just asleep to it.
I will say this too. I'm not the first one that they've done this to. I would say that there's hundreds of thousands of black men in this country, let alone in the state of Pennsylvania, who had their charges trumped up over ridiculous evidence that wasn't there, like ghost dope. That, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've done time with for convictions based off of no evidence whatsoever, no drugs to speak of, conspiracy charges, ghost dope, things like this. There's thousands of men incarcerated right now, regardless of skin color, that are doing time for things that they literally didn't do, or that the government is willing to stretch the truth so that they do more time to enrich the pockets of the shareholders of all these prisons or the judges who own them. Oh yeah, this is an inside racketeering gig. The BOP is corrupt from top to bottom, and everybody knows it. Who's working there? I mean, that is one of the main things that I hope can come out of January 6th, is that we start to talk about what's going on in our nation's alphabet soup organizations, and especially with prison reform, because hopefully that's one of the main things that can come out of January 6th to redeem this nation.
Amen. When Sarah started sharing some of that stuff with me in the summer before the election, I was just like, what? Did you think of prisoners as bad people? And she, and now you and many others I've interacted with, are telling me, oh, no. These people are railroaded. It's all a money-making scam. Like, what? How heartbreaking is that? Oh my God. Yep. Oh, by the way, if you ever need any ammunition that Pennsylvania was stolen, if you haven't been to Audit the Vote PA's website yet, there is plenty to back it up. It is not just things that people say on the internet. Our own governor, Shapiro, there's 120,000 more ballots cast than voters who turned out for the election in 2020, fully documented. They're trying to hide it. The vote margin was 80,555 votes, and yet they gave it to him anyways. And any wonder they rushed the certification and didn't want it looked into. And oh, by the way, our organization knocked in 12 different counties, 5,000 doors, and found anomalies that would make your head spin. People say that only 4 people are registered to vote here, but the State Department had 7. People that said, nope, I didn't vote, but there's a mail-in ballot cast for you from this address, or there's mail-in ballots cast from this address from others who you're telling me don't live here. Is that accurate? Yes, it is. We found it all over the state, red counties, blue counties. No question 2020 was a stolen election. So, Robert, feel free to pass that along to any of your Pennsylvania friends who think that we're all still crazy.
Without a doubt. And I will say that I tried to do you guys justice in this book too. One question remains. You might not have gotten there yet, but we talk about how that election was stolen, and we recite some of the things that you come up with. We also talk about how Steven Crowder went to an empty parking lot holding up a mail-in ballot that says someone's supposed to live here, and there's a name on here that doesn't match this vacated lot. How's that possible? So this isn't just an opportunity for you to learn how January 6th was a lobster trap. This is an opportunity for you to call out garbage when you see it. This is a toolkit. This isn't just a book. So I want you to know that you had allies before you knew it that were backing you up in the middle of hell in Philadelphia, reciting the work that you put out there like a message in a bottle, and now it's in a book. And we knew each other before we even crossed paths. And so I will tell you that this is important for you to keep up, because the only way that this country is going to be set free is if truth sets it free.
Amen. There's so much I'm looking forward to collaborating with you on. Patriot Academy, how Sarah and I met. Rick Green would be salivating at the thought of you doing anything with Patriot Academy. You are exactly what we are trying to create out of the young men in America, is more Robert Morses that feel that devotion and that sense of duty that they need to take care of their community and their family and the widows and the children. And you are just everything that we're working to achieve. And the school system, of course, has put in horrific policies that are trying to do the total opposite. And we have our work cut out for us. I think
Can I talk about that real quick? Real fast?
Anything you feel led to, my friend, go for it.
So as you know, because we discussed, the Department of Education in the state of Pennsylvania filed a lawsuit to take my teaching certification from me while I was incarcerated. So not only did everything I fought for in Afghanistan go up in flames, but everything that I earned through Penn State also went up in flames as well. So I'm actually in contact right now with the Department of Education in Pennsylvania to get my certification back. They say that the reason why that they withdrew it is because of the charges against me. Well, now that there's no charges, I should have my certification. They said that there's going to be a hearing in May, which there shouldn't be a hearing. I've got the documentation. They've seen the pardon. I'm free as a bird now, and I shouldn't be. So the fight rages on, but I will tell you that The Department of Education here in Pennsylvania probably doesn't want a patriot like me in the classrooms, because I'm going to be the stick in the mud that doesn't push the LGBTQ garbage, that I'm not going to push the CRT garbage. And for what it's worth, the Department of Education here in Pennsylvania has totally taken advantage of their power and has used it against this state's kids, not for them. They're not teaching real history. They're not even trying to back up the kids in their psychological and physical and physiological development. What they would rather do is create little peons of a disgusting and warped government, as opposed to teaching real history, which is completely based on independence. And so in May, there's supposed to be a hearing. It might not even get that far, because all I got to do is, present enough of these documentations. But I wouldn't be surprised that in May, I have to go down to Harrisburg and I have to look all these people in the eye that, without their bosses knowing, came up to my mom and apologized that this department was doing this to her son. So yeah, I'm putting that out there too, that we all know that how you really feel. I'm going to get my certification back one way or another, whether it be the easy way and they just give it back to me because I'm pardoned, the difficult way where I see them in court and we fight this out. But I'm not going to stop until you let me back in this classroom, because I have more right and necessity to be in that classroom than I would say a vast majority of teachers in the state of Pennsylvania do right now.
You preach, my friend. Yes, Lola Days, you're saying teach at a Christian school. I know. I'm thinking, can we get him at our co-op? I know the Lord, I'm sure, has plans for him, and he's in touch to figure out what that is. But oh my gosh, that is so good. And this is exactly why they targeted you, because they don't want this. And in Pennsylvania, I don't know where the people were that left you behind, Robert, but thank God, I guess, that he was building a small army behind us at Audit the Vote, and you have a ton of patriots at your disposal that if you wanted to go on a speaking tour in our state, I am sure that they would welcome you with open arms. I would love for you to share the story all over Pennsylvania, because this is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. What else do you feel led to share, my friend? I kind of want to give you the floor as we wind down. It's over an hour, but we still have people watching. If anybody has a question for him or a comment, stick it in the chat and we'll try to address it before we wind down. But I don't know, do you have, what else do you want to talk about?
Well, I will say this, and I'd be a fool not to. I need to give glory, honor, credit, and praise where it's due. I never would have made it without the help of God. And I'm confident that because he was with me in those conditions, and he closed the mouths of the lions that I was locked in with, and he sustained me while I was in the belly of a concrete whale, and he has now renewed me like Job was at the end of his story. I'm convinced that this God isn't just limited to Sunday school, that this is an active force that we can call upon. And we have as much of God in our lives as we want. And I realized that I needed more of him in order to survive. But that desire didn't expire when I left prison. So I will say that if you're struggling or if you are scared, don't worry. A lot of the good stories in the Bible start out that way and they end really, really cool. But the other thing that I think is interesting to consider is the King Saul. So Saul is replaced by King David, as we all know. But Saul used to have the anointing from God. Because of his actions, he gave it up. And he was replaced. And he was shamed before he gave it up and was replaced. So the warning that I think is present within the life of Saul is that we can have the anointing, we can have the covering, we can have the blessing from God, but just like with our republic, it's our decision to keep it or not. So if we want the blessing from heaven, if we want this nation to survive, and if we want this nation to look like a constitutional republic as opposed to tyrannical wasteland, it's up to us to keep it. It's in the preamble of the Constitution. It's our responsibility. And so if we want Jesus in our lives, we have to ask for it. And if we want freedom in our lives, we have to fight for it.
Amen. It's funny you mentioned that, because we're going to do a series of events as Audit the Vote is regrouping in what we're calling phase 2. You know, phase 1 just looked like a whole bunch of people screaming and yelling and insisting that something went wrong and begging and pleading with our legislators and our local county commissioners to fix what was wrong with our election system. And unfortunately, just today, breaking news, our In my opinion, corrupt communist governor Josh Shapiro instituted a new electronic database to manage our elections. So we're going from bad to worse. We're going from the Shore system to what's called civics. This is not a good, my sources are saying this is not a good thing. I've got to do more of a deep dive on it, but it does not get local control back for the elections, which is what is necessary in order to restore trust and transparency, is to get as much back at the local level as possible. And this just continues to centralize power and centralize the system. It is not a good thing. And so we have a long fight ahead of us. And one of the ways we're going to kick that off is in April with the tour we're calling the Republic, If You Can Keep It Tour, A Path to Honest Elections. And so we're working on 3 different events, one on the western side of the state, the eastern side, and then somewhere in the middle. But I love that you said that, a republic, if you can keep it. That's exactly where we're at. We've been given a reprieve. I wouldn't say the republic is fully saved, but we've been given a second chance. And it's up to us to continue to secure it and see if we can keep it. Couple things before we wind down and close out the night. You mentioned somewhere that they can go to see video of what you witnessed personally on January 6th. Cowboy Logic, can you repeat that for people?
Yeah, so the latest episode that dropped on the greatest TV show of all time on television is the latest episode where Dan Caldwell and Jeff McKellop tell their story of the video footage that they watched the entire time that they were incarcerated from their discovery. That totally flips the January 6th narrative on its head. So that's on the latest Cowboy Logic episode, but you can also find through the videos, they've done hundreds of interviews for January 6th. I think they're the only network and the only team of people that have actually followed January 6th and promoted it as much as they have from their source. So it's amazing what they've done. But they also facilitate an interview with Landon Copeland, who confirms that not only was he a member of Antifa from Oregon, but that 200 people from Oregon followed him to the Capitol to raise hell on the Capitol steps disguised among us. So Cowboy Logic is a great resource for your viewers to not only learn the truth about January 6th, but to also, feel like a red-blooded American again. And you'll probably see me every once in a while on there. But the latest episode that they dropped with Dan Caldwell and Jeff McKellop is necessary for every American to listen to, because not only are names dropped, but tactics, maneuvers, and eyewitness accounts are referenced like professional news anchors. And all these men are just passionate, proud Americans. So it's the information's out there. You just got to want it.
Okay, last question I promise I wanted to get into, but this is why we need to meet and maybe do another one of these in person, is Kelly Meggs, Oath Keepers. I know that they've done, the mainstream media did a really hardcore job of trying to paint the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys as these really bad people. And what we're finding out is that couldn't be further from the truth. Catch me up tell me a little bit about Kelly and the Oath Keepers and how you guys got connected since you co-wrote this book.
Yeah, so Kelly Meggs and I were actually in the prisons together in Philadelphia for about 2 months, and that's where we really hit it off. But ahead of time, we were in Lewisburg together, and we were in the DC jail together. He is a father, he's a grandfather, he's a business owner. He owns, a little bit of land that he takes care of livestock and farm crops and things like this. He's an average American that really got activated around the same time that I did, because our country was on fire. So he joined the Oath Keepers, not just for the hurricane relief, which is offered, not just because, they try to do Red Cross missions and things like that, but because he wanted to protect small businesses that the American dream kind of revolves around. And so he did that. I think he was in Kenosha or something like that, but he kind of got involved because he answered the call. And so Kelly Meggs is an excellent individual. He helped me write the book, One Question Remains. It's smuggled out of prison, now available on Amazon. But Kelly Meggs is the type of guy that you wish your dad was, or you wish your grandpa was. And though he made fun of my hair all the time, we became excellent friends. And we were actually playing a game of chess when a light bulb erupted over the heads of ours, when we recognized that January 6th was a lobster trap, but it was also a chess move. That's why I designed the cover of this book, to have the superimposed image of the pawn within the Capitol, so that your reader can decide who the real chess player or the pawn was that day. And I want to say one more thing for your audience, because I think that they may have never heard this before. but it's their ancestors speaking this from the grave, which is extremely important. And it's on page 142, about the end of One Question Remains. And it's as follows. You gonna read along with me, page 142? That's awesome.
I sure am.
All right, so we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs down. Samuel Adams. So I'll read this. Are you there?
I'm here.
I feel like it's here now. Okay. All right, here we go. Samuel Adams knew the price of American survival under a constitutional form of government when he wrote, quote, "The sum of all is, if we would most truly enjoy the gift of heaven, let us become a virtuous people. Then shall we both deserve and enjoy it. While on the other hand, if we are universally vicious and debauched in our manners, though the form of our Constitution carries the face of the most exalted freedom, we shall in reality be the most abject slaves."
Profound. That is, we share such the similar heart, Robert, you and I, in that we just want to empower other people to get in the fight and figure out what it is they're called to do. That's what I hope my entire platform does. And it clearly looks like you have the same heart. I think that's why
we definitely do. We're kindred spirits, my friend.
Yes, I'm drawn to you in that way. I'm excited to get to meet you in person. I know my podcast, I usually, because of the heaviness of the topics that we talk about on here, current events, of course, last night, admittedly, I have to go back and watch the State of the Union address. I fell asleep actually after they escorted out the Democrat guy, because it was just...
Isn't that crazy? I love it how Trump was singing to the Democrats. So he says, "I can cure cancer and stop wars, and these people will never stand and clap."
Yep. That's one of the last things I heard. So I have to go back for me to comment on all this stuff. We'll catch it up next week. I do this every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Robert, I hope that we can connect in person, that you'll come back and share more, and just anything that Audit the Vote or that I can do to support you and my Pennsylvania connections and friends and patriots. We are here for you. I'm honored that you took the time out to be with us today. I know Joel has a funny video, but I think we're going to table it for tonight, and we're just going to close out. Stick around, Robert. I want to talk backstage. This is heavy, but this is really information that needs shared. So please, I plead with you, like, share, subscribe, and share this video. And as soon as Joel gets the Opus clips up with the little clips that we can start putting out and making our reels with our Facebook and our Instagram, that stuff will be available too. The whole goal is just to draw people in so they can hear his story and they can understand what really happened, because what they do to these people like Kelly Meggs and the Oath Keepers, it enrages me when the media lies, when they write and print things about people that are not true and they know it. And that's one of my passions, is to just destroy the narrative that is false that they are trying to paint about these people, because I too fell prey to the lies and didn't understand. Well, maybe there were, maybe Enrique Tarrio really did. He was given 22 years sentence in prison and he wasn't even there. Maybe he really wasn't even there. Maybe he is. And it was this book reading about Kelly Meggs, the Oath Keeper, to help me understand how they did really pull them in. And like you're calling it a lobster trap. That's another real, I haven't heard that term yet. And one more thing. The hole. I actually don't know what the hole is. Tell me what the hole is before we close out.
The hole is a concrete box with no windows, maybe a hole in the door around the height of your knee, no air conditioning, no heat. Very limited, no comfort, very cold, and it's a box for your mind to devour itself in. So it's modern day torture, and it's a place where you go if you get in a fight, or if you're causing problems, or if you frustrate somebody that works at the prison. But essentially, the hole is a place where your mind devours itself and you suffer, and some folks never come back the same.
Unbelievable.
Known as what? Solitary confinement, right?
Or is it different?
Difference. The hole is solitary confinement, but the hole specifically is a place it's cut off. It's like you're underground. It's a tomb.
Wow. Oh my gosh. On that heavy note, I hate ending this heavy, but share this, and I hope to have Robert back. We will see you guys next week on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Stick around, Robert, so we can talk about getting together this weekend. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Patriots, have a great week. I'll see you next time.